From Relay FM, this is Connected, episode number 79. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at PDF Pen 7 from Smile and Igloo. My name is Mike Hurley, and I am joined by Mr. Stephen Hackett. Hello, Mr. Stephen Hackett.
Hello, Mr. Michael Hurley.
You forgot who I was. And Mr. Federico Viticci.
Hey,
Good
guys.
afternoon to you. We are all back as a three again.
Yes.
Which nearly didn't happen.
Well, there was an accident.
There was an accident. Well, actually, let's address this later on in the show as to why this episode nearly didn't happen today.
Okay.
But we have an action-packed show here right now. We're not actually streaming live either, for once, which is peculiar. It's just the three of us.
Feels kind of lonely without the chat room.
It does. It does. I could start sending you messages if you want.
Yes, please
the chat room.
be the chat room.
Or we could jump in the chat room once Clockwise starts and be really confused.
Yeah, we could just use the Clockwise chat room, which is starting shortly, as our chat room, and they can just, they can direct the show that way. That's a great idea.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? Follow-up time, please.
Yes, I would love to hold your hands and walk through the field to follow up together.
Okay.
We've spoken about the Amazon Echo a couple times, Federico. You bought one on some sort of gray market website. Mike, you have not bought one. Is that correct? Are you still holding out?
That's correct. Jason just bought one, though.
Yeah, so did I.
Wow. It's like, I feel like I'm being surrounded. This is like some kind of pincer movement.
Peer pressure, Mike.
It is. So Dan Morin has been smug in our Slack about the virtues of the Echo. He's had one for a while, and so I picked one up. It's in my kitchen, which is like the natural place for it to be. I had it on my desk, and it seemed not as useful. And in the kitchen, you're washing dishes, and you can just shout at it and ask questions and play music. I'm trying Spotify with it, so I paid for a month of Spotify, and it's really great on the Echo. It's a very compelling little device, and if you don't want to stream something, it works as a Bluetooth speaker, so you can just play music to it directly, unlike the Sonos, which you have to jump through hoops, as we've talked about.
So you can play Apple Music on it then?
Yeah, I mean, it can work just as a Bluetooth speaker, so I have it set up just to play Overcast from my phone if I want to, or if I want to, say, hey, go play so-and-so off of Spotify, it'll just stream that from Spotify directly.
Yeah, I just did it last night. You have to say, Alexa, pair, and it starts the Bluetooth pairing process.
That's
nice.
So cool.
Yeah.
All right, so Stephen, I'm going to levy the same kind of, not accusation, but thing that I did to Federico. You just bought a Sonos, and now you're talking about the fact that you're playing music on your Echo. Like, what else are you using it for, otherwise just to replace the Sonos that you just bought? I want to point out right now that for the history of this show, I have been accused unfairly of having a shopping problem. But you both, in the space of a month, bought Sonoses and Echoes, right?
Well, see, there's a difference, Mike, between having a legitimate shopping problem like you used to have and doing research.
Oh, come on.
That's right. It'll be an article, so it's a
When I bought the LG
right?
G Watch whilst inebriated...
Well, you answered already, Mike.
I spoke about it on the show.
Yeah, it almost counts, probably.
It works.
Just blog about it. So I really like having the Echo in the kitchen because it's the whole hands-free experience. And, Siri could do this to a degree if it's in your pocket or you have an earbud or something, but for instance, I always get like tablespoons and teaspoons mixed up. Like when I'm trying to make something, like the relationship between the two is just
even when you try and say it and you call them tablespoons, which
tablespoons.
The word tablespoon is maybe one of the cutest words I've ever heard. We should go into business.
The tea bowl. Let's make a tea bowl. It's like a table just for tea.
Yeah. Tablespoon. Sorry.
And so it's nice just to be able to say, hey, Alexa, remind me of whatever. And that sort of hands-free thing is the big difference for me. The Sonos definitely sounds better. The Sonos will live on in our house. I think I'm going to put it up on a shelf in our bathroom, actually. But
oh my god, yes, that's a great idea.
I'm all about shower music, and it'd be nice to have a good speaker in there. So I think there's a room for both in my household. What about you, Federico? Are you going to hold on to both, or do you know yet?
Yeah, I'm gonna hold on to both just because the Sonos sounds way better when you actually want to listen to music. You know, the bass, it's warmer and louder. It sounds great. But I've been using the Echo, so the experiment has been going very well. I've been using it to turn on my coffee machine, which I'm using my old Belkin Wemo switch plug kind of thing. And it's nice because you can... the way that you can assign these devices to Alexa is you create a group and you can give the group a name. So instead of having to say, turn on my Belkin Wemo switch, you can just assign a name like coffee maker or, coffee machine, whatever. It's very nice. So I've been using for that, for lights, unit conversions, like I told Mike last week. I've been using it a lot, actually. I hooked up my camera to IFTTT, which works very nicely. What I've been doing a lot is listening to Spotify music with the Echo, because as I shared last week, I want to see if voice powered playback makes me listen to music more. And so far, the week-long test seems to suggest that I listen to music more if I don't have to go look for music in an app. And so I guess that also means that I'm using Spotify as a sort of trial again. I've been streaming from Spotify and not from Apple Music for the past week, just because I wanted to see things with the Echo, and I want to see what's new with Spotify in general. And so what I didn't tell you guys privately is that I wanted to create a new US Spotify account. So I had to go through a whole process of faking an American IP address and buying a Spotify gift card from a website online. Felt kind of shady.
Why didn't you just use the one you had before?
Because I wanted to start one with fresh data. Just because, this is experiments, I feel like it's best if I have a fresh account. And two, because I always wanted to have a US Spotify account because you get the good stuff first. So I was able to, I'm also on the Spotify beta, so I can try the beta stuff and the American stuff because it rolls out internationally. And in general, because this is going to sound bad, I don't want to see the Italian music recommendation and top charts. Like, I just don't care. I don't listen to Italian music. There's no way, if you have an Italian Spotify account, to say, yes, I live in Italy, but please never show me Italian stuff.
It's like, I hate European music. Please stop showing me European music.
Please go away. Please, there should be a toggle, like, remove European stuff. No, European, no, because is the UK European? I guess it is.
Yeah, we don't count it. Continental European music.
Yes.
There you go.
Anyway, a series of brief thoughts. I'm still waiting to see Discover Weekly, which is the Spotify feature that everyone is in love with lately. It's supposedly starts working after 2 weeks of streaming. So in theory, next Monday, I should get my first Discover Weekly playlist. So we'll see. Queue management is just plain stupid compared to Apple Music. So when you come back to Spotify from Apple Music, Seriously, I couldn't figure out how to add songs to my Up Next queue, and I still cannot figure it out. And I thought it was a beta bug, but I installed version 5 from the App Store yesterday, and it's still the same. I just don't understand how you add a single song or an entire album next to the song you're currently listening to. And also, please let me know either on Twitter or email. I just don't care. I want a solution. How can you start listening to an album right now without shuffling? So seriously, there's no play icon for albums on Spotify. I just don't understand. What's nice? So, of course, the Echo integration is, very, very cool. And I can also search for playlists from other users, which is nice because I can start listening with the Echo to playlists by the Spotify team. So that's nice. I like that I don't have to like or, love songs all the time, which I I guess when you start using Apple Music, you get used to the idea that you're supposed to train the service with the love icon, but it's just nice and convenient not to have to tap the little icon all the time, because Spotify just learns on its own based on what you listen, what you skip. I don't know how Apple's algorithm works, if you actually don't need to press the love icon, but it's there for a reason, so I'm guessing that you're supposed to use it. And also, the Spotify recommendations are not bad at all. They go in a little deeper than the For You section of Apple Music. For some reason, in the For You section of Apple Music, I still see a lot of intro to kind of playlists, and I really don't know if I need those, because usually those artists I'm very familiar with, but Apple Music still gives me for example, intro to Ben Gibbard. Well, I mean, I listen to the entire Death Cab for Cutie catalog, and I follow Ben Gibbard, and I listen to a lot of his stuff. Why are you showing me an intro? And I see a lot of those. Whereas in Spotify, it's not as nice or as visual or as colorful or as Apple Music, but it goes on a little deeper. It shows you EPs, it shows you live versions, and it actually tells you, here's a recommendation for you based on these artists that you listen to. So that's nice. Like, gives you an explanation. I guess I'll be back on Apple Music, or maybe I'll just use both. At some point I just gotta accept the fact that I like both. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, you're mainly using Spotify because you want the access on the Echo, though, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's not happening anytime soon with Apple Music.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to do an Amazon Echo integration.
No. Yeah.
Doesn't seem like they're going to do a Siri speaker either. So, maybe I'll just use both. Instead of having the day iPhone and the night iPhone or dual iPad setup like Mike imagined, I'm just going to have the dual streaming setup.
I'm still waiting, and I think I'm going to have to give it a little bit more time to find out what you two are actually doing with this thing that makes it worthwhile as a product. Like it just feels like currently you're just both playing music on it predominantly. So I'm gonna wait to see how this unfolds. But I mean, I'm interested, but I'm not going to eBay yet.
Oh, you know what I also did a couple of days ago? I asked Alexa to tell me, Alexa, what's new? And you can listen to snippets of news from like NPR and other places, which was cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just don't see it yet. I just don't see it. I get any of that stuff from apps on my phone. Like, I feel like I need to understand a little bit more about what can be done with it. But maybe it's one of those things that you got to have it to really get it.
Maybe. We'll see. We will keep you posted, Mike.
Now, Stephen, I believe we are still deep within the follow-up segment.
We are. We have not left the field of follow-up yet. So we talked about the App Store release note thing a couple weeks ago when you were out sick, and last week you guys followed up on this comment that developers may be putting in update notes that are vague, so Apple, their update review team, they don't really know what to look for, and so to kind of throw them off the scent in hopes that rejection rate would go down potentially. And I knew this, but I didn't think to put it in the document before you guys recorded. But what is in these release notes can be changed really at any time, right? So you can have an update, you can submit it to the store, and you can change those notes once it has been approved. And clearly, Facebook and we keep picking on them, but I think they're the biggest. Them and Twitter are probably the two biggest offenders of this, where they just don't. And all you get in the App Store is, hey, we update this every week for reasons, and you should download it. And clearly that shows that while there may be some strategy there and to keep Apple off the scent of what they're fixing in their apps, I think that they just do this, not necessarily out of laziness, but I think that they think that people don't care about it. And saying, oh, we fixed these 100 bugs, then are you walking around thinking, oh my gosh, this Facebook app must have hundreds more bugs. Who knows what it's doing, right? And if you just say, hey, we're improving it, we're polishing it, then you can avoid that whole negativity around bug fixes. So I don't know. It's still complicated. I still agree with you guys that I wish companies would put more detail into there, but clearly just hiding it from Apple is not apparently not the only thing maybe at play here.
They just have detail they don't want to share.
I also want to talk about you guys last week. Of course, a lot of people were talking about this, the software quality discussion. And Mike, you mentioned something that I really liked, and about this idea that maybe it is not so much that bugs are getting through, but it's some sort of like attention to detail issue or some design issue that is leading to these frustrations on people's parts, and that the lack of crashers and the perceived uptick in little fiddly bugs. Maybe this is Apple just not paying attention at the edges. And it reminded me of this quote that's out of the Walter Isaacson book. And I'm just going to read it to you guys real quick. So this is talking about Paul Jobs, Steve Jobs' father. Paul Jobs was a salt-of-the-earth guy who was a great mechanic. And he taught his son Steve how to make great things. And once they were building a fence, and he said, "You've got to make sure the back of the fence that nobody will see is just as good looking as the front of the fence. Even though nobody will see it," and this is the important part, "you will know, and that will show that you are dedicated to making something perfect." So this idea that the details matter even if no one else will ever see them, like that resonates with me in this conversation of software quality. That, the three of us, we live at the edge cases, right? We're not typical users, and people who listen to this show and who read Daring Fireball and all, this community we're in, we're not the typical user. We live sort of at the edges of what these systems and software and everything are designed to do. And I think that as Apple has grown, their attention has shifted to something a little more mainstream, and that's fine. I'm not saying they shouldn't. But I think that what we're seeing is at the edges, like the back of the fence, if you will, in this Isaacson quote, like that's kind of where we are. And clearly that stuff is not getting the attention it once did. And so we see these rough edges and these unfinished corners. And, I wish Apple would finish them and put some paint on them and make them right. But I do think, Mike, you were really onto something in that line of conversation.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it a little bit more. I just think it's not that things are buggy, and it's not necessarily that. It's not things are crashing, so it's stuff you can't really measure. It's just that maybe things aren't spending as much time in the oven as they used to.
Yeah.
And then because of that, there is less of an ability, or that's what I think. It's more of a less of an ability than less of care, that things just don't have the same attention to detail that they once did.
Right, and I agree with you. Hopefully I didn't portray otherwise. I don't think this is a lack of care. I think that you were absolutely right that they, as Apple has grown their range of products and as they speed up their deadlines, that stuff just gets out the door. And, I've never talked to anyone from Apple. I've never heard anyone from Apple speak and not show great care over these sort of complaints. And even though I don't love everything that was said in that episode of the talk show, and at least it didn't crash has become a meme a little bit already, that I think they do care. And I think that you're right, that this stuff is like they're sort of hanging on by their fingertips in some areas. And, they've staffed up a lot, but that's not an immediate fix. In some ways that can be the opposite of an immediate fix.
Yeah.
But it is something to consider that as Apple grows and does more, that the quality, especially in these details, right? Like yes, like Apple Music works, but then it gets weird if you have a bunch of like custom stuff, or Photos works unless you turn it off and then turn it back on, in which case it overrides your library and you're sad and you write a blog post. These things are solvable, and I think that the time is definitely something to consider. I mean, thinking back over the history of OS X, releases like Tiger and Leopard were, Tiger was out a long time, and Leopard had its issues when it came out, but those OSs, the dot zeros of those OSs were not perfect. Like I'm not wearing rose-colored glasses here. In fact, I had big issues with 10.4.0 on my PowerBook, but
who didn't?
Yeah, but overall, I do feel like there was a level of polish and concern that we don't see now, and And that is something definitely to talk about and definitely to worry about.
I would like to mention a moment of great personal success.
Yes.
Please do.
As we record on the 24th February 2016, yesterday, Apple announced that pencil support for scrolling and interacting with the interface on the iPad Pro, which was missing in the 9.3 beta, is going to return during the beta cycle and will remain in 9.3, which is fantastic. It makes me very happy. I hope and like to think that my complaining, along with Gray on Cortex and other places and other people writing great articles, has helped Apple see the light in this. I think that contrary to the statement that was given from Apple, depending on how you read it, I think it can play slightly differently. My belief and understanding is that this is a reverse decision, not we were always planning to have it in there. And I think the way you can read that, the statement even says that if you read it in full, I think, when they say that they understand some customers like to use the pencil for this, and we've been working on ways to better implement this while maintaining compatibility during the latest beta cycle. So they're going to be putting it back in, having taken it out, because they probably wanted to kill it. And I just wanted to mention both of your link posts to this, because I thought it was really funny, both of them, and they'll be in the show notes. Federico says, this has to be my favorite Mike was right so far, and I agree. I actually can't read Steven's link post because I would have to bleep it on air, so you can go and check it out for yourself. It'll be on our show notes. And me and Gray are recording next week, and I'm very excited.
Yeah.
I'm really pleased they decided to do this.
Yes.
I think it was a decision that they made because they didn't like the fact that people were using the devices that way, not fully understanding how important it was to the current user base.
So what I heard from the beginning was that it was a decision for the iOS 9.3 beta 1. But that they were open to change, and of course change didn't happen for betas, and eventually people were giving Apple the benefit of the doubt, and just a few days ago, like, it all exploded.
Yeah, basically over Monday and Tuesday, things got really hot on this issue.
And you can see clearly Apple reacting to the news cycle and giving a statement, not to a Mac, or Apple-focused publication, but to The Verge, which is a general, tech website.
Yeah, other places, iMore did get the statement, but The Verge got it first, I think.
The Verge got it first, and it's obviously, they made a decision in the first beta, let's just try, and we don't like it that people are using the pencil, but maybe we'll see. It doesn't change for 4 betas. People are telling Apple, well, actually the pencil support for navigation was helping people with RSI problems. I got a tweet from a reader. He says, I'm doing chemo and my hands are swelling, and it's just more comfortable to use the pencil with the for navigation instead of my fingers. And I totally understand, because I can relate to that. So Apple saw the people having a bunch of different and valid reasons, and they decided to change it for the next beta. Now, what I want to know is this gonna be a setting? Is this gonna be in accessibility, as a few people, including you and CGP, suggested, or is it just gonna be like it used to be? You connect the pencil and you can do everything.
Again, who knows if this stuff is real, but I've heard no saying.
All right.
We'll see what actually happens, but I think at least in 9.3 it won't be a setting. Maybe later, maybe when they actually add more functionality, which I think is the reason they were doing this in the first place.
Yeah.
But we'll have to wait and see. I'm just pleased because I've missed using my pencil as much, and I'm happy that it's going to be coming back. This was, I think for a lot of people that were involved in trying to get this decision changed, like Gray and Ren and myself, because Serenity wrote a great piece on iMore, which also helped highlight some of these issues. The reason that we were upset about this and trying to get it to change is because we really, really care about using our devices in this way. So I'm very, very pleased that Apple decided to reverse the decision. I think it was the right thing to do.
Yeah. I agree.
All right. Should we take a break?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
This week's episode is brought to you by Smile and PDF Pen, your Swiss Army knife for working with PDFs. With this Swiss Army knife, I love this saying, right? Because it really does feel like that. Because with PDF Pen, you have access to so many features. It's like bursting with PDF features. You can fill in and sign forms. You can make edits. You can highlight stuff. You can even OCR text. I was doing this yesterday. Somebody sent me some ad copy that we needed for a sponsorship, but they sent me a PDF. Now, I need to take that copy and turn it into Markdown. And I was struggling to get it. Like, I was trying to highlight it in Outlook, and it wasn't working. Like, it would only highlight a word, not the entire text that I needed. So I opened it in PDF Pen, and I was able to use its OCR character recognition to copy all of the text and put it into OneWriter so I could manipulate it into Markdown. This is the type of stuff that you're able to do with PDF Pen. And this was all on iOS that I was doing this. You know, I think that this app is so fantastic for anybody that works with PDFs, and I work with PDFs frequently. And you can take it to the next level when you use functions like redaction, word export, which is so useful to me, page numbering, and even Bates numbering, which I don't even understand, but my understanding is this is a good thing. Does anybody here know what Bates numbering is?
It's no.
No.
No. I assume it's something really important, though, but you know, if you need it,
Has to be.
Yeah, exactly. If you need it, then you got it. And with PDF Pen for iPad and iPhone, which I love the most, you'll be able to take control of contracts and forms no matter where you are. You can enjoy that paperless office that you've always wanted. No more printing, scanning, and faxing. You can fill in and sign with PDF Pen on any of your devices, and you'll be on your way. Smile offers 10 great tutorials from the talented Mr. David Sparks. These short videos will teach you everything that you need to know about PDF Pen 7. You can learn all about PDF Pen for the Mac and iOS at smilesoftware.com/connected. PDF Pen 7 and PDF Pen Pro 7 require OS X Yosemite and work beautifully on El Capitan, and PDF Pen for iOS is available from the App Store. Thank you so much to Smile for their support of this show. Bates numbering, huh?
Yeah.
What does it
It's
mean?
a thing.
Nobody knows. All right, so the FBI.
Yes, they're listening right now.
Probably.
Yes.
What do you want to say about this?
I mean, this is an ongoing thing, and you guys even spoke on Upgrade this week that it's obviously complicated. I really just wanted to point listeners to 3 links if they hadn't seen them yet. The first is a blog post by the FBI director that came out over the weekend that basically says, hey, look, we're not looking for precedent. This is about one phone. I don't really believe him when he says that. Wanted to point people to Apple's FAQ, which I think if you have anyone in your life like I do who is confused about this or doesn't know what's going on, it's like the place to go to kind of understand it from Apple's perspective. The last one is an article written by Ben Thompson that I think is probably the most definitive piece I've read on this, in the sense of not necessarily the technical details. I think there's room for that, but just kind of where this case fits into the overall like world of both technology and politics. And Ben's article is really good, and it's public over on his site, and so we'll have a link to that in the show notes as well. You know, I think that it's probably pretty clear where the 3 of us stand on this.
We all support the FBI, right? Like that's our
not
stance.
at all.
Isn't
Nope.
Oh no, I got
No,
it
it's
so
not.
wrong.
No, it's not. I mean, I'm not. I'm not picketing in front of an Apple store, but I think that Apple is in the right here.
Something that it's been rattling around in my brain a little bit is like, I support the idea of trying to keep people safe. Like, fundamentally, I respect that and law enforcement. Like, there are people in this whole thing that are trying to do what they think is the right thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
my assumption would be I believe that there are people in this scenario that are trying to do bad things, but I believe that there are also people that are trying to do the right thing. And I appreciate that. And I can tell, I think we can all tell that Apple does too, in so much as they have tried to provide them with the tools necessary to do this without breaking the passcode, right? They tried to do it with the iCloud backups and all that sort of stuff. Because I think there's something to be said for getting this kind of information. This was a terrible thing that happened, and this, to help gather intelligence about these types of things to try and prevent stuff in the future. That's why this happens. That's why this is important, right? But what is happening in this specific case, everything seems to have all got twisted up, and it's become this like horrible thing that is happening that we would all prefer doesn't happen. And, without getting too like enthusiastic, Apple is taking a real bullet on this one, because this is not going to be popular with the general public. Like, it's just not. I was having some conversations with some family members. A lot of them expect that Apple's up to no good. Like, not that they're doing something bad, but like all of this is some kind of marketing ploy,
Yeah.
And you can really see why people would think that. But we're all of the opinion that that's not the case. But this is a absolute PR nightmare, right?
Yes, I don't. I agree with you that I can see why people sort of view the marketing angle, but I think that that's a pretty narrow view of it. I think that it's a much more important topic, a much bigger topic than even Apple's own well-being. Like, say Apple loses this and it, sets off some sort of chain reaction that, destroys the iPhone and whatever. I mean, that's ridiculous. But like, you have to think that's on their mind, right? That if they win or lose, Apple loses here. Really, I think either way to large segments of the population. That sort of letter that Tim Cook wrote, and even this FAQ, like, there's not much winning in that from the broad public. But I think that Tim Cook, I think that Apple, I think that those of us who agree with him see it as more important than that. And that's really why that particular line of thinking bugs me so much, because like, that's such a small view of this.
But like, there are people in Apple's PR department that were like, can we not do this?
Oh,
like,
no,
I would really like it if we didn't do this.
Yeah, I mean, my maybe it's romanticizing things, but my thought is that people said that and they were like, but it's worth it. Like,
yeah.
We haven't heard of anything like resignations over it or anything like that. So from everything I've seen from Apple employees who I know, it's a solid line. They're all behind it. And it's really interesting because the key at the heart of this is there's a lot of misunderstanding on people's parts of what it actually is and what they're actually asking for. And I think the FAQ that Apple written, yes, it's on Apple's website, so some people might take fault with that, but I think even Ben's article goes into like what the FBI actually wants from Apple and what it means today, but more importantly, what it means for tomorrow. And it's come out that, there's a whole bunch of other phones that the government may want access to through this new version of iOS that they've requested Apple build. But it's all very messy, and I think that the best thing anyone can do, like regardless of what you think, is just to be informed on it and not to just take that sort of conversation you had with like your family member, but like go educate yourself on it, because it is massively important. And while it is, yes, it is just one iPhone, and yes, what happened in this case is horribly heartbreaking. The ramifications of it are huge, and not just limited to your iPhone, right? That if this is allowed to happen, then it does sort of put us into a new world when it comes to encryption and how the government treats it, and that's all super important. So we'll leave those links in the show notes.
Can I just make a statement before
Please.
we move on? I want to just share my position as a...
Federico is going to step up to the mic.
As a European, I'm a strong believer that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. I think Spock said that on Star Trek. And I believe that, and I find it... it's a terrible tragedy, right? But I find it very sad that... there's a good chance that in the future in America, it's going to be easier to buy guns than to buy a fully encrypted phone, And I'm a strong believer that encryption is better for everyone. And sure, it also enables, criminals to hide their conversations. But it's, there's an excellent article on Medium from James, I can't remember the last name. He co-hosts the Exponent podcast with Ben Thompson. It's just mind-boggling to me what's going on with the U.S. government. So, I don't want to talk about politics usually on the podcast, but it's just, I feel like I wanted to share my position. And I know I'm going to upset some people, and it's fine because, we are entitled to our own beliefs. So, yeah, it's a ugly story, terrible tragedy, very sad. And it's going to get worse from a technological point of view also. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. So let's move to something with less FBI overtones.
Yes.
So the FBI, you can hang up on the Skype call now. We got it from here. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about this watch that I'm wearing, if you guys would like to hear it.
Yeah. We saw the review, Steven, on the website. So
yes, I had a weird moment. Maybe you guys have this, where like you're doing something for your website or for a podcast, and like you realize it looks completely insane from the outside. So I'm just standing in my kitchen with like an expensive camera. I brought some lights in, and I'm like taking a picture of my wrist. Like it's like what am I doing? Like this makes no sense.
It's bringing the lights in that makes it extra weird.
Yeah, well, you've been in my kitchen. It's not very well lit. It's also very green, which makes it for an exciting photo background.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a little moment in my independent life of like, what is happening? I actually had one while we're on that topic. I had one yesterday as well, finishing up my quick take and eyesight video, and I was doing like some slider shots with a quick take camera. Like I'm actually in the studio today, and there's like, this big white background we built and lights and everything, and someone like came in to like ask me something. I was like, yeah, this is my job. I know it looks crazy.
It's like you've been caught doing something. Right?
Yeah, no, it's exactly like someone's like, what you doing, buddy? Like, let me see your hands. Anyways, so this watch. So sorry. Okay, so the company who we cannot agree, I don't know how to pronounce their name. Withings. I'm gonna go with Withings.
Yeah,
with a hard I.
yeah.
I'm gonna take a stance. The Activite Pop is one. They have a whole line of these watches. The Pop is sort of like the cheaper one, not as nice finishes as the more expensive ones, but it's like $150 on Amazon Prime, and it is a watch that has a step counter built in. So it's interesting. Fitbit has done this sort of from the other angle, where they started with like just a little puck that you clipped on your belt and then a wristband, and they are now sort of adding more like watch-like things to it, so you don't have a weird picture of wearing a watch on one wrist and a Fitbit on the other. But why things has really started in my approximation, my feeling about this is they have started with the watch and then made the watch like also happen to have a step counter, not the other way around. Like looking at this thing, even in this picture, if I didn't explain what that subdial, thank you, Marco Arment, for helping me with my watch terminology. I ran this by him. I was like, what do you call all these things on a watch? You would never know the subdial was actually a step counter. And just looking at it, it just says, 0 to 100, it has a little dial. But this thing looks like a normal watch. In a meeting or out coffee shop or something, no one's going to look over and think that you have anything else besides a regular watch. And I like that. I never got over the self-conscious factor of wearing the Apple Watch. And that just doesn't exist with this product. It's a pretty good little step counter. My review, I walked through a couple issues they have. I wish it was a little more flexible in some areas. I think you could do a lot more with that than just count steps. Like I would love to be able to set, hey, I want to stand 12 hours a day, and then count my progress towards that. That's really that's what I'm more interested in the step counting right now, just making sure I just get up. And as you guys work at home, you know how this goes. Like a whole day can go by and you haven't gone anywhere. But overall, I think what I've come out of this with is that what I have sort of called in my head of like a semi smartwatch, where this thing can do step counting. You can set an alarm on it. It obviously has Bluetooth, but it runs on a regular watch battery for they say 8 to 10 months. That is basically a watch just with a little bit more. That is more compelling to me right now than a little computer on my wrist for reasons we've talked about in the past. But I don't know. I think it's an interesting little product, and I've enjoyed wearing it, the way it looks. I'm wearing it basically every day, and yeah. So it's there. You go.
All right. I have many thoughts.
Okay.
So, 8-month battery life is really good. However, 8 months for a watch with a watch battery is kind of frustrating. As great as it sounds, because you don't actually do that with watches. You don't change their batteries every 8 months.
Right. And that's the trade-off, I guess, is that because it does have a Bluetooth radio and it's doing all this stuff that I agree with you. That's a weak point. I'd like to see it be a year or more, but I think that it's better than every day.
Well, yeah, but see, this gets into not the same territory, but I was explaining it to somebody the other day, and they were extolling the virtues that their Pebble lasts 7 days. But that sort of battery life is a problem. And the reason I think is because you don't get into a routine. My Apple Watch goes down on its charging cradle every night.
Right.
That's where it lives when I take it off. The Pebble, I didn't bother with that because it lasted 7 days, but that always meant that it died on me in the day because I'd never had a routine for charging it.
I agree with you, and I think that's really a good point. Now, and I'm actually opening the app right now. I'm not sure. I believe I've read it on the support page, so don't take this as gospel, but I believe that it will send you a notification at a certain point saying, hey, you need to drop in a jewelry store and get the watch replaced. It even actually comes with the tool to open the back. It's got waterproofing in there, so I'm probably just going to take it to the jewelry store around the corner from my house and just have them put a watch in it or put a battery in it. So I do believe that I believe you do get a heads up, but I agree with you that it does lack that routine, and that really is important. I think that's why it's important the Apple Watch lasts 1 day instead of 2 or 18 hours. That it is. It is a daily thing. I think that is important.
So, for me, just step counting and okay sleep tracking, it's not enough for me to wear a device like this. I would just get a nice watch. For me, it's either something like a computer on my wrist or a nice watch. I don't really feel like I would want an in-between product like this. I feel like it's not doing enough to justify the fact that I would wear it. Just a step counter, and it's a good-looking watch, or I can get an amazing-looking watch, right? A really nice watch, like the stuff that Marco Arment is getting now, right? I'll put a link in to his post in our show notes in case you haven't seen it. The watches that he's looking at are beautiful. That's what I would want to go down, that route, rather than something down the Withings route.
Mm-hmm.
If I wanted to just track my steps, I would get a nice watch and a Fitbit.
Yeah, and I guess I think if all you care about is the Fitbit-like stuff, something like this is nice because it is an all-in-one. But yeah, if you want the notifications or if you want complications, for instance, one of my complaints I write in the review is that I wish this had a complication for the date. I just all the time look down when I'm signing something, I don't know what day it is, and then I end up pulling out my phone. So yeah, I see what you're saying, and I think that if you do want more, that's why smartwatches are a thing. But I think there is a segment of the population, and I may be one of them, that the step counting is enough. That's I just want a little note on how I'm doing throughout the day, and I want a watch that doesn't look like a Fitbit. And I think the market's big enough for all that stuff to exist. But I definitely I understand what you're saying completely.
I wanted to just draw out a quote from your article. You say, I think it's the end, the longer the Apple Watch sits on my nightstand, the more I think that a regular watch with just a little bit of technology is a better solution for me than a full-blown computer on my wrist, which you basically just said a moment ago. But I think this is just interesting to me to watch people sour on the watch. We mentioned Marco, yourself, and there's a few other people that I know that are maybe not wearing theirs as much anymore. And mine definitely frustrates me. It's unresponsive, it's slow at points, but I've actually come to really like it. as a device. Like, it gives me the information I need, and it allows me to perform quick tasks. I am a big fan of the complications, like setting timers. I do that every day when I'm cooking, and I like being able to do it directly on the watch. It's very quick and easy to do that. I like my weather complication with Carrot Weather, and I like my calendar stuff with Fantastical. Like, there is a long way to go in some places on the Apple Watch, but overall, I am a happy wearer and user of mine. But I see why people are moving away from it. But for me personally, like, as I said, I would either go one way or the other. Like, a device like this, whilst I see why you like it, like, it's not enough for me. Like, if I'm going to have something tracking my activity, I also want something that's going to give me information.
Yeah, I agree with Mike. I don't love the Apple Watch as much as I was hoping I would love the Apple Watch. But it's also, it gives me the stuff that I want, which is timers, notifications, being able to glance at things like messages and emails. In many areas, it's a flawed product, mainly because of the not capable hardware and the software limitations. But it's also, I haven't worn a watch in decades, really, and I'm wearing the Apple Watch because it's convenient. But I'm intrigued by Steven's approach, because it's not wearing a traditional watch, which at this point, I don't want to say that I don't understand. I do understand, they're nice to look at and they make for nice accessories, but if I'm putting something on my wrist, I want some functionality, that's in terms of software functionality. Mm-hmm. Steven's approach is somewhere in the middle, and I'm intrigued, because I believe there's a lot of people who don't want to buy an Apple Watch just because it's it's expensive, or they don't have an iPhone. We recently bought as a present to a relative of of our family one of those fitness bands from, I think it's called the Vivo Fit. It's a Garmin product. And, we thought about buying an Apple Watch, but of course that was out of the question because it's just too expensive. We were like, we were putting together the money as 5 people. And an Apple Watch was too expensive. But something like Whiting's, this Activity Pop, it strikes a balance of, it looks like a watch, but it's also like it's got these features that work with the phone. I think it makes more sense to me than a traditional watch. From that point of view, I'm the opposite of Mike. Mm-hmm. I want to see, Steven, if like a year from now you're still wearing this, or like 4 months from now, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and there's a lot to the Apple Watch that is still attractive to me. That the frustration, Mike, that you spoke about, and some of these little things that it just doesn't nail. Those sort of like kept grating on me, like a burrowing into my mind of like, I need it to wake up when I pick up my wrist, or and that stuff is getting better, I think. And but it just was like death by 1,000 little cuts. And I think that while the software has issues, I think that the core issue for the watch for me is just that it's slow, and I can put up with not super fast, and I can put up with, to a degree, little bugs, but like together it was just a 1-2 punch that was just too much for me. So I'm not saying that I'm never going back to the Apple Watch. I'm still wearing it some days that I'm busy. It's still really nice, but like I've spoken about here a lot, my life has changed and it's not as useful to me as it once was. And that's fine. There's, like I said, there's lots of products for lots of different types of people. But what I think is most interesting out of all of this is that, like you said, there is this sort of theme with some people we know that, hey, maybe this isn't, what we were hoping for out of this product. And like you, Federico, said that you don't love it the way that you hoped you would, or that maybe you did at the beginning. And that is really interesting. And I don't think the Apple Watch is doomed by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it shows that it is still very much a satellite product and still very much something that is optional. None of us are saying that about our iPhones, and at least the 3 of us, none of us are saying about our iPads either. and maybe the watch just suffers from what the iPad suffers from for a lot of other people. That, hey, this is great, but I don't really see how it fits in my life. It's not really. I don't really have room for a third product, and maybe there's some of us that don't have room for a fourth, and that's fine. Like, it's fine, but it's something that I'm not sure Apple. Apple pitched this as like, this is going to be great, and it's just not great for everyone. And it'd be interesting to see how Apple responds to that with the next one or with the next software update. Are they going to, like a lot of people have suggested, are they going to really focus on one of these areas and say, look, we're really going to focus on the fitness this year and really going to make that great? Because right now the Apple Watch does a lot of stuff, and a lot of that stuff doesn't knock it out of the park. And I think it'd be really interesting to see them pick one thing and really make it great, and maybe dial back the app thing a little bit. And I don't know, it's just gonna be interesting to see what they do. And I think they gotta do something. And I think that holding the course is probably not for the best. But I guess we'll see later this year.
This week's episode is also brought to you by Igloo, the intranet you'll actually like. If you work in a company that uses an intranet product, I can, with some strong certainty, unless you're using Igloo, of course, guarantee that it is a product that is something you're not very happy with. It's maybe, like it was for me, something that you're tied to using just the machine that you use in your office building to be able to get access to. And because of that, it's pretty out of date, nobody uses it, and there's just a bunch of crap in there that you're not really interested in. All of this will change when you use Igloo, because Igloo makes it so easy for you to access, use, and customize your intranet. You can manage your task list. You can have task lists in there from your laptop during a meeting. You can share status updates with your colleagues, like, how you would do on social media. You can do all of that within Igloo. You can do that from your phone because it's beautifully responsive. And you can also access files. There's all file sharing and collaboration built into Igloo. You can do this wherever you want. You can do this at home. You can be in your pajamas. You can be in the garden. It doesn't matter. Igloo is mobile because everything is mobile these days. Your work should be mobile too. This is what Igloo believe in. I mentioned configuring and customizing. You can completely rebrand your Igloo, make it have the complete look and feel of your team, and you can create specific group spaces for different teams in your company to just give them the features that they need, and everything is drag and drop. I mentioned about sharing files. They have their collaboration engine, so you can upload files to Igloo. They have read receipts on them, so you know if somebody has seen a specific document, and you can also integrate services like Box and Google Drive and Dropbox into Igloo's easy-to-secure platform to stop documents from going outside of your company and into people's personal accounts. You don't want all of that. You can integrate them all in to Igloo. They have 256-bit encryption, single sign-on, and Active Directory integrations. They all sound like really important things that I'm sure the people in your IT department would love to hear. It's time to break away from an internet that you hate. Go and sign up for Igloo right now. You can try it out for free with any team of up to 10 people for as long as you want. That is an awesome deal. 10 people. If you have a team smaller than that, you can use Igloo forever for free. Go to igloosoftware.com/connected. Thank you so much to Igloo for their continued support of this show and the glorious Relay FM.
Glorious. I like that.
Yeah, I thought I'd throw that in there. Why not? All right, so Federico Vitici wrote another little book this week. You put it on iBooks, man. It makes it a book. What was the word count?
10,000.
10,000. So
that's a book.
Yeah, not the worst. It didn't crash Chrome, so we're doing okay. You wrote what I consider to be a fantastic article about using the iPad for work and how that has continued to evolve and become more central in your life, and how we're basically down to just this as the only thing that you need to use a Mac for. And we'll come to that shortly. But why did you want to write this article, Federico? I mean, you speak about the iPad all the time. You're always writing stuff about the iPad. What compelled you to write this specific article?
Well, I like anniversaries. I like birthdays in general. And I thought at the end of maybe the last week of January, I thought, well, the anniversary of the iPad article from last year is coming up. I should probably, do some follow-up. And it all started as a quick follow-up. I just wanted to update people primarily on two things: the iPad Pro, which I reviewed in November. I wanted to share with people, this is what I've been doing, and also the impact of iOS 9 so far, because it's easy to judge a new OS when it comes out. You take a look at the new features, you describe what they do, and you try to assess some of the utility of those features.
And you imagine how you might want to use them, right?
Yeah, and you try to guess what's gonna happen, but it's another thing to kind of let a few months pass and look back and see and write about the experience, and that's what I wanted to do. And so I started to write and plan that article as a quick follow-up, and it was in a very different form. Initially, it was this quick follow-up from a technical perspective, and it got that, and there was that introduction about sort of looking back at 6 years of iPad and some of the problems, some of the struggles that Apple faced in terms of marketing and sales and iOS and the Apple community itself. But then I got stuck when I was writing the article, because the follow-up section just didn't seem exciting to me. It was boring. So I was texting Mike because I was stuck. I didn't know what to do. And I let a few days pass. So I took a break from the article, like 3 or 4 days. And then one evening I was washing my dishes and I was just thinking about, other stuff. And then it just came to me. It was like, the metaphorical light bulb turning on in my brain. It was like, yes, I gotta write about what I do with Club Mac Stories. I've been working on my iPad, managing the newsletters, managing the club members, creating the content for the newsletters. And this is a new topic that I've never talked about. So last year I wrote about the iPad for Mac Stories. This year I'm going to write about, putting together the newsletters. So it came to me, and here we are, guys.
So we mentioned at the top of the show a reason why we're late and why we're not streaming live this week. And it's because most likely your Mac was upset about the way that you spoke about it in the article, and it struck back at you. And what happened to you on Monday?
Well, I just went in to plug in my MagSafe connector, and it wasn't working anymore. So I left it the last time that I opened my MacBook, which was the last time I recorded a show. It was okay. Plug in my MagSafe on Monday, and doesn't work anymore, doesn't turn on. So I bought a new MagSafe from Amazon, and it showed up today, which is the reason why we're recording today. And I thought the timing was amusing.
Yeah.
I talk about my MacBook and the single reason why I'm still using OS 10, and sure enough, it doesn't turn on anymore. Thank you, MacBook.
Screw you, buddy.
Yes, basically.
I liked what you said in the article about OS 10, though, that your move away from it really doesn't have much to do with the Mac itself, right? I mean, it's about what the iPad offers instead, and as the Mac user of the group, I appreciated that so many people in this conversation, I think we're going to get to some of that, make it about one versus the other, sort of in a negative way, but in reality, it's that the iPad works better for the way that you want to work, and it's not that the Mac is a garbage heap. So thank you, appreciate that. Yeah,
I mean, I generally believe that OS 10 is it's fantastic, and MacBooks are, especially the latest ones. I'm a big fan of the design, and they're great machines, right? And it's just I don't need them anymore, and I don't want them, because I want my computer to be different and to be, apps that I can touch, 4G internet built in. I want a screen that I can hold and, rotate. And I think both iOS and OS 10 are mature enough to help people make this choice. Do I want to use an iPad? Do I want to use a Mac? Do I want to use both? And having choice is great, because you can use whatever works best for you. And it sounds so obvious that you shouldn't even be supposed to make that kind of statement, but there are still people who take sides in a very bitter fashion. So I feel like you want to use an iPad, you want to use a Mac, everyone's fine. It's much better to talk about what could be better, what could be improved, and how you can take advantage of an iPad or a MacBook instead of arguing, my decision is better than yours, which is silly.
So
Agreed.
what could be better and what could be improved about the iPad?
So many things.
Of course, but I want to get some ideas from you. Like, what do you think now could make it a better device for you outside of replacing podcasting? You go into that in your article, but I'm wondering, are there any iOS changes or any hardware changes that you would like to see that could improve the iPad to make it more capable for you, realistically?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, there's still so many things that iOS gets wrong or only partially right. For example, and this is part of my annual iOS wish list that I'm working on, doing bulk file operations on iOS. So you want to select multiple files and you want to open them, or you want to send 2 or 3 files to another app. It's still impossible because the copy to what used to be called opening menu of iOS is still based on a one at a time system. So you can only send one document at a time from app A to app B, which is very much a slow and cumbersome process. So those need to be improved. iCloud Drive, while it does get some things right, the approach of a simple system which looks like a file system like on a Mac, but it's actually based on apps, and those apps have folders with icons that represent the apps where the documents come from. That's nice, but it needs to be improved in many, many ways. 2 of which are the ability to restore deleted files, which you can do on iCloud.com on a desktop, but you cannot do on an iPad or on an iPhone. And the ability to view versions of a file. Everyone gets this feature almost right, and I want to mention Dropbox as a service that gets it right. You can revert to any previous version of a file, and you can do the same with Box.com. You cannot do the same with iCloud Drive. There's an API for versions, which very few apps implement. I believe MindNode is one of the few that I can remember that implements iCloud versions. Apple apps don't have iCloud versions that I know of, and there's certainly not a versioning feature in the iCloud Drive system. I can mention, multitasking improvements. If you have used split view or slide over to any extent in the past few months, and if you don't hate the app picker, you need to reconsider, your beliefs, because it's really a bad app switching UI. It's slow and it takes ages to find an app that you've not used recently. There's no search bar, and the entire interface, it's just slow to scroll and to pick another app and to switch between apps. There's no drag and drop. If you're using 2 apps at the same time and you want to move, an image or, a bit of text from one app to the other, you still have to use the clipboard as a sort of, workaround, because there's no direct touch-based communication between apps. Even, MacBooks, which don't have touchscreens, have gotten this right for like decades with drag and drop on the desktop. And of course, I mentioned audio issues on iOS. This is not just about podcasting, by the way. You still cannot do multiple tasks that involve audio. For example, one of the things that I believe, teenagers do a lot, but, people of all ages do a lot, is you're listening to music and you want to watch a muted video in the background. It could be a tutorial, could be a live stream of, games or sports, or politics. Maybe you want to just turn on the audio when, an interesting person comes up. you cannot do that on iOS because every time you start a new audio process, it mutes, so it stops the other one. So you cannot do simultaneous, song listening and, watching a video. You gotta choose. There's many of these limitations still on iOS, and some of them have been around for a long time. So, like the audio problems or the file operation stuff. Some of them are new after iOS 9. So, split view improvements, the app switching UI improvements. It's a combination of new problems and I believe what the kids call low-hanging fruit in a way, which has been around, problems that have been around for a long time.
What do you think has kind of changed in the last year that has made things easier for you? Like, do you think it's the Pro that's had such a big impact? And did you expect it to?
No, I didn't expect it to. I was actually very concerned.
You were a little skeptical about the iPad Pro.
Very much, very much. I was skeptical about the size. I was skeptical about split view. I really didn't think that Apple would do split view. And I was happily proven wrong. And every occasion, I try to admit my wrongness, my past wrongness about this. I think the Pro makes iOS 9 better. That's what I would say. I really liked iOS 9 on the iPad Air 2, which I used, to write my iOS 9 review, which was, a very, important effort on my part. I'm still happy about that. But I feel like the iPad Pro, just because it's bigger, makes iOS 9 better for split view and, doing any sort of creation. So you can see more paragraphs of text, you can see bigger images. Videos are louder because of the speakers. So it's not necessarily just because it's bigger. It's because it's bigger, iOS 9 has been created for that kind of experience. You can use iOS 9 on an iPad mini, you can use, iOS 9 and split view on an iPad Air 2, but it's just better on the Pro. And this applies not just to split view, which is the obvious, candidate for those improvements, but also things like the shortcut bar, for example, which I talk about in the article. You can have all of these shortcuts right on top of the keyboard. And, if you use apps to write, for example, in my case, it's OneWriter or Drafts. These shortcuts help in, saving time when you're working with text and Safari, that kind of stuff. I feel like it's better to look at Notification Center when it's more spacious, and it's better in apps like Workflow, for example, because you can view more actions on screen at a time. So it's bigger, but if Apple didn't make iOS 9 the way that it is, I don't feel like I would love the iPad Pro as much as I do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, the reason that I love mine so much is the pairing. And they do pair so well together. Mm-hmm. It really is a match kind of made perfectly.
Yeah, I didn't really expect the iPad Pro to jump into my life the way that it did. And what you guys just talked about is really the reason that the iPad felt so much less productive for me, at least, because I was locked into one thing at a time. But split view, like you said, just really opens up the horizons as far as what you can do. And even, the place where the iPad Pro is really taken over for me is like in the evenings where, if we're watching TV or just hanging around the house, where I'd have my phone in my pocket. And now I just keep the iPad Pro, at the end of the couch. And if I need to look at an email or, someone needs something on Slack, I can do that really easily, or just check Twitter. Like, that sort of casual stuff is made much more productive through iOS 9 and split view in a way that I did not expect. And even going from the Air 2 to the iPad Pro, it's so much better. And if you haven't done it, it's really hard to explain, but it feels so much more easy to use and just so much more space where you really can do a couple things at once and not feel cramped anymore. And that really has made just a huge difference for me.
So, Federico, I wanted to ask you, what do you think that developers should be considering now when making iPad apps?
Charging for money. that comes to mind.
That's a really good point. Yep.
I feel like there's a comment from John Gruber during Fireball yesterday about the Apple reversing the Pencil decision. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but that the iPad Pro and Pencil users are really passionate about the experience. And that could be more true to me. I feel like there's a lot of people who are using an iPad Air or an iPad Pro, I think, as their main computers. And those people are willing to spend good money on apps that help them work faster. We've talked about this at length in previous episodes of Connected. I believe a lot of developers shouldn't be afraid of asking for money. And by money, I mean anything above $5 for an app, I feel like it's sort of a meme to say that you cannot make money on the App Store. There are legitimate problems, many problems on the App Store, but it's also, developers, I believe, should also try to at least do their part in reversing this trend. I would also suggest making something that I really don't like is when I see iPad apps 6 years into the iPad, there are still companion apps to the full Mac experience. I really don't understand the concept of a companion app anymore. It made sense maybe 6 years ago when the iPad couldn't replace a laptop for a lot of people. And there are still people who don't believe you can use an iPad as a laptop, but whatever. The concept of a companion app is very outdated. And if you make a companion app for the iPad, with some exceptions, so, remote stuff to launch actions on a Mac, but anything else, if you make a companion app for the iPad, you might as well not make an iPad app at all, And I also urge developers to not blow up an iPhone interface and not think about the experience at all. And I know that Apple, the APIs that they gave developers to, screen sizes, you have to do as little work as possible to make an iPhone app into an iPad version. I'm not saying that developers shouldn't use those technologies, but it's just put a little thought into how people are going to use your app on, different screen sizes on the iPad. An iPad mini is not an iPad Pro. And also consider the fact that when people use computers like MacBooks, where those people are, power users, they use their computers not just for Facebook and, Spotify, they actually get work done. They tend to like the fact that they can customize the experience. So they can play around with preferences, they can adjust layouts, they can personalize the way that they use Mac apps. And I believe the same should be true on iOS. On the iPhone, I every time I talk to developers, I suggest, you should consider having a customizable 3D touch menu to let people decide the way that they want to, save time with shortcuts. And on the iPad, I would say the same. Consider having, letting the users choose how they can, customize the interface or how they can customize the shortcut bar with shortcuts that they find useful. Or consider having options for widgets, let users configure a widget in a different way. Too many apps are still, that kind of what they call opinionated experience. And I believe there's a place for opinionated apps on the iPad. It's just the way there's a threshold, between using an iPad as a companion device and as a sort of, a tablet where you get little work done. But the moment that people go past that threshold and they start using the iPad as a full-on computer, they tend to prefer an app that is customizable, that is powerful, that they paid money for, because it creates a relationship between the customer and the developer.
It's more like Mac development, man.
Yeah.
This is what it's like.
Yeah, and if you look at the best apps for the iPad, if you look at the Omni Group, if you look at, Paper, if you look at, Paper is free, but that's another issue. If you look at To Do, some fine examples of iPad software, they tend to ask for money. They tend to be fully customizable. They tend to stay on top of new iOS technologies, and they put some thought into their iPad interfaces. So these sound obvious, and they're not companion apps, of course. So, this is what I would say.
Who do you think, is there anyone else you think is really getting it right?
Well, just let me take a look at my iPad home screen again. Okay. Because I feel like there's some gems that I want to mention. Fiery Feeds gets you right. It's an RSS reader for iOS, and on the iPad they got this very peculiar interface. It's got a sidebar with articles, and it's got a view on the right for reading the actual content of an article. But they use Safari View Controller, which is a new feature in iOS 9, in a very nice way. You can open Safari View Controller on the right, but on the left you can still scroll messages, which is articles, which is nice because you can open with the usual Safari View, which gives you, Safari Reader, content blockers, extensions. But on the left you can still scroll, and see what else is new. I also think that Copied makes excellent use of the iPad. There's a custom keyboard. Copied is a clipboard manager, lets you copy stuff and save these little clippings of text or images. They have a custom keyboard. They support iOS 9 multitasking. The iPad interface actually makes sense. They support Safari View Controller. It's very, very, nice app all around. And I also want to mention ProTube. This is a very clever take on YouTube on the iPad. So Google is just plain stupid when it comes to iOS apps lately. They're doing a terrible, terrible job with the Google Docs suite of apps. They're doing a sort of terrible job with YouTube on the iPad. Yesterday, the iPad was updated with full resolution on the iPad Pro, but there's still no picture-in-picture, no split view, no slide over. And ProTube is a power user YouTube client. It supports multitasking. It supports picture-in-picture. It lets you watch any YouTube video. Doesn't matter if it's got ads or not. And, the developer is always active on Twitter. It's the kind of niche kind of app that you pay for. It's got new iOS features, looks great on the iPad, and I've been using it quite a bit. I actually didn't think I would use a third-party YouTube client this much, so I was happily surprised. And there's many developers who get the iPad as a platform, but those developers usually come from a mindset of not shaming people who use tablets. And there's still too many Mac developers who, when you bring up the iPad, they'll go like, what? It's silly to use an iPad. And I believe those who will find success are the ones who realize that while they may need, an iPad, a Mac for Xcode and programming, there's other kinds of people in the world who prefer smartphones or who prefer tablets or who are not developers. And if I believe the iPad apps that are successful come from developers who accept the diversity of use cases of OS 10 and iOS.
That ProTube app, I have no idea how it exists.
Yeah, me neither.
I don't know how Google hasn't made it disappear.
Yeah.
I don't even know how they get access to the videos.
You just put the prompt curse on it. Thanks.
No, come on, Mike. There's a YouTube API. Don't jinx it, Michael.
I'm sorry.
Now it's going to go away, for sure.
Federico, you're talking about that attitude that some developers, some users have to the iPad. What do you think Apple could do to change that?
Well,
besides besides the LOL App Store problem, is it all the App Store, or is there something else holding people away, you think?
Well, I think Xcode on iOS would build a lot of goodwill on the developer side, and it would be a great way to showcase the iPad Pro. Would be a great way to have new generations of developers and programmers approach Swift.
It's a thing that might make me sound dumb, but I'm going to say it anyway. Do you think that when Xcode is rewritten in Swift, that might make it easier to bring it to iOS?
I feel like the question about rewriting Xcode in Swift, it's really way over my head. I really don't know what that's like internally at Apple. I know that the iPad Xcode for iPad exists in some form inside Apple. I don't know if it's just playgrounds, or I don't know if it's the actual Xcode that lets you write and compile apps. I do know that it exists, and I do know that it used to be at least demoed on the iPad Pro. I don't know what this what it's like lately, because it's something that I heard a few months ago. I put a post on Mac Stories. John Gruber linked to it. He said, I also heard about, Xcode on the iPad Pro. I don't know if it's just playgrounds or if it's the actual Xcode. I know that, it exists. And I feel like maybe Apple is waiting to, for Xcode 8, or Xcode 10, maybe a couple of years, to rewrite Xcode in Swift and bring it to iOS. But I feel like it should be done sooner. It should be done this year. It would be the kind of, it will rekindle the iPad passion for many Mac developers, and I believe also for young kids who just want to start programming, don't want to buy a full-on computer, just buy an iPad and you can start making apps. That's a very powerful message, to bring your programming anywhere, to have a screen that lets you write software. That would be incredible. And you can test the actual app, not in a simulator, but on the actual device. Yeah. That would be fantastic.
It would.
I don't know if, Apple is ever going to make Xcode for iPhone. It sounds stupid, right? But is it really stupid? When you think about it, developers making iPhone apps, is it really stupid to imagine that you want to fix a bug on a phone? I don't think it's stupid anymore. But I feel like the iPad Pro is the first obvious place where I will look for Xcode for iOS. So that would generate a lot of passion and goodwill from developers. The App Store improvements, those need to happen, and they need to happen fast with WWDC this year. Not just on the iOS side, but especially on the Mac side, because I feel like Mac developers who they've been burned in a way with the Mac App Store. Mm-hmm. A lot of that disappointment extends to Apple platforms in general. So basically my theory is, if you upset a Mac developer, that's also gonna reflect on the iOS App Store, because that Mac developer is losing goodwill with Apple in general, not just with the Mac App Store. And so Apple improving their developer tools on every platform, with the focus on the Mac, and also new tools to help developers make iPad software, that would go a long way.
Yeah, most definitely. Nice article, Federico.
Thank you.
Where can people go? They can go to MacStories.net, right? We'll have the link in the show notes. Yeah. And also, if they're a Club Mac Stories member, you can get an ebook, right?
Yes. There's an ebook version. Yeah.
So people should check that out so they can read it on their iBooks devices and whatever it is they want to read their books. You can find our show notes over at relay.fm/connected/79. I want to thank again our sponsors this week, Smile with PDF Pen and Igloo. If you'd like to find us online, there's a few places you can do that. You can go to macstories.net for Federico's work, and you can go to 512pixels.net for Stephen's, and you can view their many projects. Stephen has YouTube videos now, which you can find links on his website, and Federico has these many podcasts like Canvas and Remaster, which are on Relay FM. Stephen has Liftoff on Relay FM. You guys are so busy. It's crazy. If you want to find them online, Federico's at Viticci, Viticci. Stephen is at ISMH, and I am at iMike, IMYKE, and we will be back next week. Until then, thank you so much for listening. Say goodbye, guys.
Arrivederci.
Adios.